Hello, hi, my name is Meehae Song. I'm currently a PhD candidate at the School of Interactive Arts and Technology at Simon Fraser University. I work with Dr. Steve DiPaola at the IVIS lab, and today I will be sharing with you BioFlockVR, which is a project I developed in conjunction with my PhD thesis. I would like to thank everyone who are attending the virtual event today and for having me participate. Thank you so much. Uh, Before I start, I would like to share with you a bit of my professional background of where I come from and what I've been working on for the last about 20 years. I have a computer science degree from Ewha Women's University. I went on to receive two multimedia certifications from Vancouver Film School and Rhode Island School of Design. When I graduated, I got hired as a research engineer at the Fraunhofer Institute. It's a German research institute. They were starting up in Singapore, so I went to Singapore to work there for 5 years. I was hired as the main 3D conceptual artist and modeler, and I worked on many different projects. One of the first ones being the Apple factory, where we had to recreate the entire Apple factory to be able to read in simulation data so we can see where the production is going smoothly or where there were backups virtually, and be able to reapply it back into the real factory. I also worked on architectural walkthroughs from CAD plans, also with some forensic for forensics, where we actually use these models in court. This was part of the project that came about after the subway accidents in Singapore. From there, while I was at Fraunhofer, I did my master thesis while I was at Fraunhofer, and I was very interested in heritage preservations in VR. And so I started to look around at the heritage in and around Singapore and Malaysia, and was very interested in the Peranigans. And so for my master thesis, I created a complete virtual environment of a restoration of the Peranigans from books, from interviewing people, and created over 200 artifacts. And while I was developing my master thesis project, I really did not want to use the conventional 3D mouse, which is quite cumbersome and difficult to use. So I started to look at different ways of interacting with VR, into VR, and a very context-specific interaction. So I implemented a Chinese calligraphy brush into my virtual environment, where I could actually write in VR, and also I could also point it to the screen and use it as a navigational device. So this is when I really started to look at how can I interact with my environment, the virtual environment, more intuitively, using different ways of interactions. And so I started looking at movement, at physiological data, using biofeedback devices, and also with body movements. And so in 2010, I was actually working with chronic pain patients. A lot of them had difficulty walking, and even having a normal life. So I developed a prototype system called the Virtual Meditative Walk. In this system, I connected a treadmill to the virtual forest that I created, and that was the main ambulation, walking to the virtual forest. I also connected the Thought Technologies GSR, galvanic skin response, biofeedback system in real time, which would actually control the fog that would come and go. So when the first person first goes in, it will be very foggy, and as you regulate your bio response, the fog dissipates. At around the same time, I started to work with art and music therapists, looking at arts-based therapies as a way to look at virtual reality environments. And I'm to this day I'm working with Dr. Susanna Rupsat. She's an archetypal art therapist, and really helps inform a lot of what I'm creating in VR. I also started to get very interested in the mindfulness personally, and I started to go through different meditation retreats. And in 2013, I was very honored to be one of the Mind and Life graduate student research fellow, and attended the Summer Research Institute for a week in New York at the Garrison Institute, where I was very fortunate to speak with many scholars on using VR and technology for mindfulness. I also attended the Buddhist Geeks conference, which is very interesting, and here I got a chance to try out the emotive EEG system for the brainwaves. I started to look at different biofeedback devices that could potentially be part of the VR applications that I'm creating. Currently in our lab, we're using a variety of different devices. The one I use is the BICA E4 wristwatch and the Muse EEG. The BICA is able to, in real time, collect heart rate data, skin temperature, and as well as accelerometer gestures, and the galvanic skin response. And so this is the different types of data that comes into the BICA, and a lot of from just the heart rate alone, we can really tell the states of the person, from if the person is very frustrated, or if the person is in a much coherent state. This is the data that gets read in from the Muse EEG headband, all the different bands here. And I'm currently running studies with Dr. Stephen Barnes from University of British Columbia to look at the different types of bandwidth data that we are obtaining from the Muse. While I was creating the BioFlockVR environment, I started to really look at, be inspired by nature phenomena, and to create a much more different environment than what I was used to creating at Fraunhofer, which was much more rigid and much more architectural. And I really wanted to move away from that into much more organic environments, and trying to look at amorphous environments that are, and looking at particle systems, and also looking at models that are not modeled by hand, but it's actually generated through different through equations that are more based on nature. These are the two main elements in BioFlockVR. So this is the sphere that encapsulates the environment. And this is the real-time particle system based on flocking. where all the characteristics of properties can be changed in real time, mapped to the biofeedback devices. And as I was designing the BioFlockVR, I really wanted to go away from this singular VR experience that and really start to look at relationships between two people, relationships between our environments. And so for BioFlockVR, it's actually a two-person installation where the first person's EEG data gets sent to the virtual environment, where the second person is inside, and the sphere, the movement of the sphere, is actually generated from the first person's EEG. And the second person, as they're inside the sphere and breathing in a rhythmic fashion, the heart rate of the second person gets mapped to the birds flocking in real time. In July of this year, I was invited to a global VR AR festival in South Korea. I exhibited my work for 7 days, where there were about 1,500 people that went through the installation, all the installations, and it was received very favorably. People really engaged with the experience and being able to look at their bio response in real time, and also their friends or families, and having a co-experience together. And that was very powerful for a lot of people. I was also lucky to have some participants try and gather some data, and this is an ongoing process for me currently. And here is here's BioFlockVR conceptual video that I'd like to show. And the second person is inside the virtual environment of the sphere, and their heart rate is changing, the color and the speed and even the behavior of the flocking of the birds. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone enjoyed the talk. And this is my contact information and our lab at Simon Fraser University with Dr. Steve DiPaola. Thank you so much.